Recently, the Queensland University of Technology hosted a conference where someone named Sarah Schwartz presented this image of Dutton's Jew. She tried to assert that Australian Jews who support Peter Dutton are anti-immigrant, hate Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims, and think that anti-Semitism is the only form of racism. Now I get that there are people who think that Peter Dutton is a live-action remake of Voldemort, and I don't blame them. I'm an Australian Jew, and I don't like the guy either. But Sarah Schwartz's comments against the Australian Jewish community were still uncalled for. There are a large number of Australians, not just Jews, who support Peter Dutton for a number of reasons that have nothing to do with any of the spiteful reasons that Sarah Schwartz invented when trying to demonize them. Putting aside for a moment the increase in anti-Semitic and Islamophobic attacks across Australia, over the past few years, violent crimes, sexual assaults, and car thefts have gone up. Stabbings became a regular story in the news last year. And for all the talk about how bad housing affordability is these days, homelessness is also getting worse. All of this is taking a huge toll on our mental health, and that's before we talk about any of the obvious issues like inflation, cost of living, and rising unemployment. But why would we expect a Harvard graduate to understand any of that? Instead, she's too busy calling Australian Jews racist just because some support a political candidate that she doesn't like. But circling back to this QUT conference for a second, because there's actually a lot to unpack here. Saying that Australian Jews hate Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims is not just false, it's also incredibly problematic to say something like that, especially at a time when more than ever we need to be able to come together. Actively trying to spread a message in a public, possibly taxpayer-funded forum that Jews are a racist, hateful collective just because we don't agree with your personal political views is anti-Semitic, even if you are Jewish.
Shit like this brings the movement down.
The fact that this all went down at an anti-racism symposium is rain on your wedding day levels of ironic.
I'm not sure that's technically irony.
What? This is like O. Henry and Alanis Morissette had a baby and named it this exact situation.
As a Jewish Australian whose parents immigrated here, as someone who has worked in HR and higher education, and above all, as someone with brain cells, I can't believe this needs to be said, saying racist things at an anti-racism event is still racist. But finally, to respond to some of the stuff that Sarah Schwartz said, which isn't so much problematic as it is just dumb. She said that Australian Jews are scared of protesters. Yes, how intolerant of us to be wary of protests where people have been marching, waving flags from literal terrorist organizations. This idea that Australian Jews hate immigrants is especially funny to me, because if that was true, that would mean that we hate our immigrant parents and grandparents. Or did I miss the day in school where we were taught that Jews are native to Australia?
Hello? How stupid are you people?
Thinks anti-Semitism is the only form of racism. No, Sarah, we don't think that, especially those of us who've had the misfortune of experiencing both. Just ask any Sephardic or Mizrahi Jew who's been told, oh, but you don't look Jewish. But we do recognize that anti-Semitism is a form of racism, one which you seem more than happy to facilitate by spreading such negative messages about the Jewish community. My favorite, though, is defender of Western civilization and Australian culture. Yeah, don't you just hate it when a group of people are willing to defend Australian values like democracy, freedom, and equality?
So uncivilized.
Sarah, if you hate Australian values and the people who defend them so much, no one's forcing you to stay here.
Move along. Please, move along. Find somewhere else.
There are hundreds, if not thousands of people from overseas who we, the Jewish community, would welcome, who would love the opportunity to take your place if you hate it here so much.